Dear panelists, dear audience, good evening. Welcome to our web panel titled Turkish-EU Relations After the Leaders Summit. It is my pleasure to have three distinguished experts on the Turkish-European affairs. But let me start with some basic parameters of our web panel with the audience and the panelists. Well, first I will start with the introductory statement. In the first round, each panelist will have maximum 10 to 15 minutes for a statement as a response to my questions. And in the second round, panelists will have another 5 minutes maximum for additional comments. Since our panel is interactive, in the third round, the panelists are invited to answer questions from the audience. Well, at the recent EU Leaders Summit on 10th and 11th of December 2020, European Union leaders discussed among the topics the future of Turkey's current relations with the European Union. While Turkey is considered as an essential strategic partner to the European Union, in particular with regard to topics like migration, economy, security, and counter-terrorism. However, the recent summit once again showed a divided European Union. Prior to the summit, President Erdoğan and high-level Turkish officials had stressed the strategic nature and significance of the European Union's constructive relations. Even if from time to time the ties between both actors are shaped by ongoing political debates and differ in their political, geopolitical, security or economic interests, both actors are aware of the fact that they benefit from strategic economic cooperation and are depending on each other to tackle for example, common security threats. When we look to the summit conclusions on Turkey, the EU leaders condemned on the one hand unilateral actions in the Eastern Mediterranean. However, in practice, they took a soft stance, granting Ankara another 3-month period. Concretely, they decided to add new names of individuals and companies to the blacklist that currently exists. Germany, which holds the EU presidency, I think until end of December or already over, I didn't get these days, has always opposed sanctions and wanted to keep communication channels open with Ankara. And as a reaction, on the other hand, Çavuşoğlu, the Turkish foreign minister, stated that no European Union sanctions can change Turkey's stance on its rights in the Eastern Mediterranean. Yet, the EU leaders also made it clear that the positive agenda remains on the table, promising Turkey to continue providing financial assistance to manage migration flows in the country. Last but not least, EU leaders said they would seek coordination on the matter of Turkey with the Biden administration, which shows that, I mean, we can easily ask the question whether there is a new actor or back in Europe when it comes to Turkish-European relations, the Biden administration. So we will see it, but we will also discuss it here. Looking at these dynamics and statements, obviously we need to talk about the near future of the bilateral relations by focusing on the risk and new opportunities the European Union and Turkey might encounter following the recent leaders' summit. By this, general consideration of Germany's EU leadership in the last 6 months will be also addressed, as well as significant projections for the near future. I'm really looking forward to get more insight from the discussion with our panelists. Well, since our time is limited, I would really like to start with Rainer. Rainer, thank you for your participation. I really appreciate it. And first, let me introduce you. You are a senior journalist with numerous publications on Turkey, and one of the key opinion driver in the German media. It's really good to have you with us. And right now, may we have an overview of the position of the European Council and the key EU member states, Germany and France, with focus on the topics triggering the recent crisis in EU-Turkey relations, with special focus on the recent status quo of the Turkey-EU relations in the context of EU accession. This is one of the questions. And or also on the Eastern Mediterranean tensions, French-Turkish bilateral frictions, the role of Germany under its EU presidency as mediator in Turkish-EU relations, still stand or stimulation for new dynamics, question mark. And well, as I mentioned before, what about the role of the Biden administration in the formation of EU's policy towards Turkey till next EU summit? Will be there concerted initiative for adjusted European Union US sanctions, or can we expect a positive agenda for Turkey? So the floor is yours, Rainer.
Thank you, Safer, for having me back in SETA. It's always a pleasure to be with you, even if it's only remote. I don't want to be an opinion maker. I just want to write articles full of correct details so that other people can make up their opinion without being, let's say, impressed by that, what I think about something. Well, I would like to start, but there are too many points you have given me for 10 minutes. I just start immediately with another milestone in the relations between the European Union and Turkey. Today, the last 8 contracts out of the refugee deal of 2016 had been signed with a volume of 780,000 million euros. Europe fulfills its commitment of these refugee deals, and this deal is entering a new phase, leaving humanitarian aid and entering developmental assistance. So the European Union is further committed to Turkey, and I have also the final declaration of the summit in front of me, where the sentence is, the EU will also be prepared to continue providing financial assistance to Syrian refugees and host communities in Turkey. Having this final declaration in my hands, I would like to point out 2 more important issues. One is it strikes that Turkey for a long time is a candidate for full membership. On the other hand, Turkey is quoted in this document in the chapter of external relations, not in enlargement. That might be disappointing, but on the other hand, Turkey is becoming is being offered an important transactional partnership. And Safer, you have mentioned the strategic interest. Yes, Europe is not blind, as President Erdoğan has somehow hinted to. The sentence in chapter 29 of the Council of the final statement says, the European Council reaffirms the EU's strategic interest in the development of a beneficial relationship with Turkey. So it's on one hand, Turkey is not, the candidacy is still on the table, yes. The criteria are known to everyone, the Copenhagen criteria. And what we like to hear is the word of reform. Not just like to hear the word, but see action. Seeing reforms implemented in terms of rule of law, of transparency, of human rights. The question is whether it's realistic to expect such positive steps. The MHP is not known to be a reform-oriented party. The question is what reforms might undermine the presidential system. But so This is one point of the final declaration. The other one is that the final declaration repeats the offer being done for the first time in past October of a positive agenda. It avoids sanctions. Maybe the sanctions might have, Turkey might have been deserved, because after the October summit, where the offer on the positive agenda was on the table, the reaction of Turkey was, frankly speaking, rather disappointing, because all which race the ship was again sailing into the Mediterranean, where Russia was opened unilaterally, then the boycott call on the French goods. So the final declaration avoids sanctions, that would have been the stick, and it offers a carrot. Cooperation in trade, in economy, modernization of the customs union, liberalization of visa, and that leaves that enters then into a transactional partnership with Turkey, and it's now up to Turkey to say yes, we accept this hand given to us. So the window opportunity is open, and the offer is extended for 3 months. So we can talk then later on what might happen in March, because before then we have a change in the White House, and the wind for Turkey is becoming stiffer. It was quite easy for Turkey to act under President Trump, because, well, he has created an atmosphere of advantages, such as, for example, withdrawing from the region of the Middle East, and thus creating a void where Turkey was entering. On the other hand, he created chances by his style of politics, leaving multilateralism, leaving rule-based international structure, and therefore opening for Turkey a room for coercive foreign policy, which it has used. I don't think that President Biden, the President-elect Biden, will have a confrontational policy towards Turkey, but he will put more pressure on Turkey in terms of human rights, of rule of law. It is known that he has quite friendly relations with Greece and Cyprus that might help to convince them that they also have to compromise. It's not only one side who is compromising. And what I think the biggest chance in the presidency of Biden will be that he will return to an institutionalized setting in a multilateral world. It's not anymore between persons that we deal as between the Presidents Trump and Erdoğan, but between institutions. And there will be no more frictions as we had recently between the US and the EU. There will be more transatlantic harmony, which will also create opportunities. In this context, I would like to hint that Turkey is well advised to take this opportunity to restart a positive agenda with the European Union, because recently Turkey was not successful in creating a coalition for itself. Rather, well, if you have partners such as Northern Cyprus and Azerbaijan, and have enemies such as France and other Mediterranean countries, well, that's not so helpful. Turkey has not been proved to be a coalition partner, and I think that should change. On the topic of the conflict with France, well, there is a clash of two Mediterranean powers with an imperial memory, and the imperial memory they have is just overlapping, and so you have a conflict between these two states, and you need a power to mediate. Both, I think, President Turkey and President France are hardball players, and it's not wise. Well, nobody would win from a conflict in the Mediterranean, so I think it was very wise of Chancellor Merkel, who has always shown a very constructive attitude towards Turkey, to develop this positive agenda. And Mrs. Merkel has a very strategic view on Turkey, and she always argues we need Turkey. We not just for solving the migration issue, but we need Turkey as a stable security pillar. But the problem is the offer is extended for 3 months, and also the patience of Mrs. Merkel is not unlimited. And therefore, I hope that we will, both sides, the European Union and Turkey, will take this chance, this this window of opportunity which is open before it closes again, might close again in next March. So much for my first intervention. Thank you.
Thank you, Rainer, for your overview. I think there are some very important topics you mentioned. When it comes to the mediation of Germany, I think we were really focused on its activities regarding the mediation between Greece and Turkey, but in the background, what I could hear here as well is that Chancellor Merkel also tried to ease the tension between France and Turkey on each bilateral level, on both bilateral levels, just to try to manage it. And yes, the direct communication in the Turkish-American relations, which will definitely have an impact, the future of it, also on the European track, was very personal, on the very personal level. But now it will be definitely institutional. Administration will talk to administration, and I think we will see within the next weeks and 2-3 months how it will develop, since we see that the sanctions are now not only on the table but also executed, some of them. So it's of course another topic for a panel. So this is, but the European aspect we should always keep in mind and on the radar, I think. Yeah. Okay, so
just give me one more sentence. Mrs. Merkel is not one who is making politics by producing noise. She is linked to her phone, and she's making a lot of phone calls and is diffusing conflicts just behind the scenes. So you might see more President Macron, who is very open and who is speaking in the public. But Mrs. Merkel is solving, diffusing problems just by, let's say, mobile phone diplomacy without making noise.
Yeah, exactly. And just to add on Macron, of course is huge under pressure in terms of domestic politics, and try to gain confidence and trust with some initiatives on the foreign policy arena. And I think so far it was not very successful. We have to accept, whether in the Karabakh conflict, neither in Libya and in the Eastern Mediterranean crisis. We will see what will be the outcome there, and they are even not anymore visible in their traditional influence area of Lebanon and Syria, especially Syria.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and this is something which shows that he will have tough times until the next elections. I think in 2020 or 22, no? Or okay, thank you, Rainer. Our next expert and a distinguished expert is Zoltan. Zoltan Egeresi is external research fellow at the Institute for Foreign Affairs and Trade at the University of Public Service in Budapest. Or Zoltan, am I right?
Yeah, it's also true, and I also work within this university. There is Institute for Strategic and Defense Studies.
Okay.
Let's say main place, full-time place. But anyway, so you were right.
Yeah, I had the pleasure 3 weeks ago to be on the panel with you on the historic. It was the historic aspects of the European Union-Turkey relations. Was also quite interesting. But now I will start with a general question and will come down with some additional questions. It's kind of a provocative question. Is there a common foreign policy of EU member states towards Turkey, or is it divided due to diverging specific national interests of member states? This is the question, and when I have to add on it, I mean, we know we always focus on when we say there is a division in the stance towards Turkey, then we first think always on France, and Germany is trying to encounter, but in a very smooth way, very behind the scene. And I mean, can you also tell us how is there a bloc formation within the Europe? Are there different groups with different interests? It shouldn't be only Turkey, but it can help, since everything is put on the same table for the negotiation. So is there are other let's say blocks of group of people, Eastern Europe or Northern Europe, Eastern Mediterranean? So this is my general question, and I would also have your opinion on also Germany's leadership the last 6 months as a mediator in different regional issues, especially of course on Turkey, and how do you see France policies within the European Union, and of course what is quite interesting for me personally as well is to look at Eastern European countries. We really only focused on the Western European member states, what they are thinking about various domestic or international issues. But sometimes it's we do forget that in certain political areas also in some way Eastern European countries are pivotal, very important in decision making, especially when it comes to issues where the voting mechanism is how you call it, is all have to vote yes or not, you know, that's why. So please just let us know about your thoughts about it. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So first of all, thank you for having me. I think it's a great opportunity to participate in this panel, and thank you for these questions. I mean, it's just only one, but a wide range of
ramifications
topics. So it's great. That's why it's not that easy to give a simple answer, but I will try to summarize my ideas about it. So yeah, first of all, it depends on what you mean. Or how do you approach to the European Union or to the different member states? So first of all, when, for example, we get to the conclusion of the European Council, we get decisions or kind of statements from the meetings, which usually is taken by consensus. And in several cases, you mentioned unanimity or a qualified majority can decide. And especially in case of unanimity, just only one state's voice can be really determinant or can the whole process. But usually, as a whole, various member states are intending to create a consensus. However, we have right now 27 member states, which means that it's really difficult to get a common point. It's, let's say, especially in the external relations, makes everything more difficult and slower concerning the EU decision-making level. And here, as you pointed out, it's really important that we can talk about member states who have their own national interests at domestic level and in external level, and they push in this, let's say, common meetings for a more comfortable, for a more convenient agenda where they can rather articulate and defend what the government, the current head of state or head of government would like to reach or would like to defend. It's really important. And that's why probably, even if we get at the final stance a common point, a common statement, a common declaration, during the decision-making process, it's really important how member states are behaving and what are their current approaches to given issues. So what we can see behind the closed doors, it's a really interesting bargaining process where depending on the given state interest, they can be more proactive or less proactive concerning the various issues. They try to convince the others to support their agendas and so on. So that's why everything in the European Union seems to be, especially observing everything from the outside, it's a slower and less effective process. However, and here is, especially from Hungary, it's important to emphasize that this situation, if you look at the history of the European Union, it's not just the European Union, the whole European continent is a rather unique case when smaller and less developed states has the kind of voice, has the say, and the opportunity to influence their own future, even against the, let's say, big powers as well. So it's a rather comfortable situation, which means everything slower. And if we right now think about the history of the European Union, one can see that it was full about debates concerning in the external relations, even the enlargement, where, for example, one or two bigger or even smaller member states could really define the European community or European Union's stance. For example, during the 60s, Charles de Gaulle in France was rather against any kind of accession of the United Kingdom to the community, or later, just to state another rather positive example, for example, in 2005, when Croatia's accession negotiations were on the table, for example, Austria and Hungary were really proactive to launch the process, and finally they were, let's say, victorious from this point of view. So it's really important to say that the decision-making process of the European Union, it's rather linked to a kind of consensus, in several cases, unanimity. And then we get Turkish case, and even to the conclusion of the last European Council meeting, where finally sanctions will be accepted against Turkey. However, I will say the whole stance is rather softer. And here we can identify three country groups currently shaping the relations with Turkey, especially in line with the Mediterranean issues. Let's say we have a group of hardliners constituted of at least three, rather even 4 or 5 countries, countries which are really directly involved in the ongoing debates, like Greece and Cyprus. Here we have even more challenging issue, as the division of the islands of Cyprus is not solved issue. It's still a huge debate in itself, and the European Union intends to get final resolution. I mean, to solve this issue, but I think it won't be solved in the upcoming near future. And of course, we have France in this great game in the Eastern Mediterranean, because France, of course, historically, and as it was stated already, has a kind of imperial background, imperial heritage. It's interested in the region per se. However, for example, concerning the Libya civil war, it's rather supporting other parties, as Turkey does. So here we can see rather diverging interests than converging interests. And that's why this country group, sometimes Austria can join they are pushing for, let's say, stricter or harsher sanctions. In the middle, let's say we have another country group, which is probably the most diverse one. I will say the country club of sympathizers. I wouldn't say that they are 100% friends of Turkey, but they are rather open to understand Turkey's interests, grievances, and problems, and they intend to do everything in order to de-escalate any kind of conflict in the Eastern Mediterranean as a whole between the European Union and Turkey, in order to open the way for negotiations, which would be rather probably mutually more beneficial than a belligerent discourse and so on. And if we try to identify the members of this group, of course, it's always changing, but nowadays we can see a kind of Mediterranean groupings, and we can see a Central Eastern European groupings, and of course, I think I can add Germany as well to this group, who was, especially during the last months, was always pushing for the negotiation to keep open the channels. So concerning the Mediterranean countries, I would say that Italy seemed to be rather having a kind of pro-Turkish stance. It's especially due to economic reasons, and especially to Libya, where Italian economic assets, facilities, and so on are rather located or concentrated in the territory ruled by the GNA, which is supported by Turkey. We can see here Malta, which is the smallest European Union member states. However, it has a really important geostrategical position within the Mediterranean, and it can be highly influenced by any kind of trouble or war in Libya, and of course by the migration flows. And Turkey did a lot during the last years in order to strengthen the economic relations. And here we can also mention Spain, which has also good economic relation with Turkey. Didn't want to get too harsh sanction, which would be able to damage the Turkish economy. Concerning the Central and Eastern European states, I think it's a really interesting case because they are relatively, let's say, newcomers on the Turkish horizon. Of course, I'm not talking about the historical issues, but compared to the Western and Mediterranean European Union members, the Eastern and Central European countries like Hungary, Czech Republic, Czechia, Poland, but also Croatia, Romania, and Bulgaria. So they were a member of the Eastern Bloc, which meant that they had no, at first, good relation with Turkey, which was a NATO member during the Cold War, and their economic relations were also, let's say, limited with Turkey. And everything has changed during the 90s, and what we can see right now, increased economic interdependency, increased security cooperation, concerning the Black Sea region, concerning the case of Ukraine, and also concerning the migratory migration crisis during the last years. And I think this is a really crucial issue that, for example, Hungary or Bulgaria during the last years were really ready to understand the Turkish position. And for example, in the Hungarian government, in several forums, was rather propagating the idea that Turkey is a kind of key for the security for the European Union. And compared to the western part of the European Union, Germany, Austria, the Netherlands, and so on, due to this historical division, there is no Turkish diaspora in these countries. When we are talking Turkish diaspora, we are just talking about several thousands of people. Like in Hungary, we have around 3,000 Turkish citizens, which is a not huge group. Of course, they are really part of the society. If you go to the downtown of Budapest, it will be easy to see a relatively great number of kebabci. But I think that the Turkish diaspora in Hungary or within this country cannot raise or cannot get the level of the bilateral relations. In the case of Bulgaria, of course, it's relatively different because Bulgaria has a Turkish minority constituted of several hundred or thousands of people, but it's a historical issue. And I think that especially at the political level, due to the fact that they have a political party, de facto political party, embedded in the Bulgarian political system, and their interest is articulated in the parliament as well. And during the last year, the leaders in Turkey and in Bulgaria intended to avoid any kind of ethnic issues, which is also really important part of the cooperation. So this change, this difference, really make these countries more, let's say, proactive in the case of Turkey, because they can behave more as a more pragmatic actors. And finally, we get Western European countries, whose situation with Turkey is more controversial. They have Turkish diaspora, they have large Turkish diaspora. Turkey is rather involved. And even internal domestical debates in Turkey are transformed, and they appears in their own society, like in Austria, in Germany, and to the fact, or due to the number of Turks living there. So it's already not a pragmatic bilateral issue, but a domestic political issue. And of course, they have other economic incentives and consideration, because the Turkish diaspora during the last decades has become a kind of a transnational community, which has good connection to Turkey, and there's a bridge they can connect Turkey or Anatolia to Western Europe or Central Europe, which is, I think, a key issue in handling issues, handling the various problems. And here, I think the Germany, which is a, let's say, gravity point within the European Union, especially after the Brexit, has a final say on shaping the Turkish relations. But what we could see, that Germany was rather proactive and constructive, like keeping the negotiation channels open, bringing the various parties together, and a bit keep against the harsh sanction, which on the long run probably will be more constructive in creating a larger dialogue and find a modus vivendi with Turkey. As I mentioned, we have three groups. We have the third one, let's say the rest of the European Union membership, who are less interested in the Eastern Mediterranean issues or Turkey, due to the geographical, the lack of geographical proximity, or the lack of Turkish diaspora, or the level of economic relations. So they are, let's say, convincible. But the already mentioned group of sympathizer right now, it's the most influential groupings within the European Union, which can behave as a kind of, or act as a kind of engine in order to relaunch the Turkish relations and minimize the tension between the community and Turkey.
Thank you, Zoltan. It was really good to especially hear from you what is what's going on within the European Union. Where are the gravity point, as you mentioned, in terms of crucial in the Turkey-EU relations? And it's really good to see kind of a categorization of hardliner than sympathizers. And the third one is the indifferent group, I think. I mean, so we are not really caring on daily basis on Turkish-European relations and focusing on their own business within the European Union. And another, maybe what I wanted to add when it comes to push let's say level to have a leverage. To have a leverage on decisions. So when it comes to the mechanism of voting in consensus, we know we already discussed 3 weeks ago that that Greece just used its leverage to get the Greek Cypriot part into the European Union by warning that they will veto the enlargement of the Eastern European countries. You know, it was one of the cases. Thank you, Zoltan, and I will come back to you in the second round. And now we have, last but not least, Talha Köse. Talha, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Talha? But you're on mute. You have to.
Sorry. Okay, I unmuted. Okay.
Now I can hear your voice, Talha. Thanks that you are with us. Just shortly on you, Talha Köse is is the coordinator of SETA in Brussels, and since recently, and he is a scholar, or better says, docent teaching at the Ibn Khaldun University, as far as I know, Talha, right?
Yes.
And he's a very popular person for radio and television talks when it comes to foreign security policy. And his field of expertise is also the European Union affairs of Turkey. So let's jump in. Thanks that you are with us, Talha. We have heard a lot about the agenda of the European countries, how they how is the intra decision process when it comes to Turkey. There are 3 blocks: sympathizers, hardliners in different groups, etc. So what is the agenda of Turkey vis-a-vis European Union and its member states? What are the expectations of Turkey when it comes to the topics migration, economic cooperation, security, or counter-terrorism? I know that it's very complex, and there are you need more than of course definitely 15, 20, even you can make another 2-3 panels about it, all of this. And but just to give us just overview of Turkey's stance and its positions, its position vis-a-vis European Union at these fields, and are Turkey and the EU capable to adjust their geostrategic interests in the conflicting regions of Middle East, North Africa, and Eastern Mediterranean, of course. The floor is yours, Talha.
Thank you, Zafer, for organizing this panel with this very valuable contributors. So definitely we can reflect a lot about Turkey's position with regard to EU relations. But the starting point is, I think, to be honest, there is a lack of trust, lack of positive incentives, and lack of excitement, as well as lack of shared strategic vision between Turkey and Europe. So, of course, this didn't happen in the last several months. It takes a long time for Turkey. 2005, 2006 was a turning point. So, as Turkey became a candidate, some of the political actors in Europe, including Germany and France at that time, decided to block Turkey's accession and negotiations. So another important turning point was admittance of Greek Cypriots despite unresolved status of the Cyprus issue. Of course, together with Greek Cypriots and Greece, and including at that time the resistance of Germany and France, anti-Turkey bloc became very strong at that time. So, of course, I remember in the early 2000s there was huge excitement among Turkey's population. Maybe 80% of the Turkish population was in favor of EU membership, and they were in favor of political reforms, and they were supporting a joint strategic agenda with EU. So unfortunately, this excitement had transformed in the coming years as it became more difficult for Turkey to imagine a shared future with EU, and as some of the populist leaders in the EU used Turkey in their propaganda and political discourses. And at that time, Turkey's position was quite different. So maybe until 2012, 2013, there were fast political, economic, and social reforms in Turkey where liberal values have been really accepted, and Turkey was becoming a significant political actor influencing the transformation in its region. And some of the countries in the MENA region, and it was a source of inspiration for a political change and political reform. So, and other countries, including mostly 1.5 billion Muslims, were also watching Turkey's relations with the EU. So most people were skeptical about Turkey's membership. They were considering that EU was a Christians club and Turkey will not be accepted. However, there was an excitement in Turkey at that time. Unfortunately, the skeptics were right in their assessment. So I think it's important to start with this. I mean, there was a very sincere commitment to EU membership in Turkey, including the government in early 2000s. So nowadays, most people accuse Mr. Erdoğan and his party, with regard to, they are criticizing about some of the, political issues, Turkey's distance from Copenhagen criteria and shared interests with the EU. However, we have seen and recognized that moment at some point. So it was actually the actors within Europe that pushed Turkey to other directions. So Turkey, after being pushed out of this unity, this potential and shared future, tried to find out new directions in its foreign policy and in its domestic politics. So I think it's a very important point why Turkey's motivation have been tarnished after the EU's, double standards in its membership issues. So, of course, we can mention set of issues, set of problems between Turkey and EU. But considering the latest summit, some people in Turkey consider that it was not a big thing. But I think the language of sanctions, the language of political pressure in Turkey is a very serious issue, and it's very problematic. So EU, rather than supporting, endorsing Turkey and encouraging Turkey and stimulating further cooperation, rather use the language of sanctions, language of punishment. I think it's a terrible mistake in EU's relations with Turkey. Yes, we know that US used the language of sanctions, language of diplomatic arrogance, but this wasn't the case for EU. Unfortunately, European leaders, with the stimulus of France and Greece and Greek Cypriots, have transformed their language and tools against Turkey along these lines. And I find this very dangerous. So I already mentioned that there is declining interest among the Turkey's population, but this declining interest may switch into hostility if European leaders continue to push pressure and mention the sanctions. I think European leaders, European politicians cannot provide sufficient motivations for Turkey, sufficient care for Turkey. And times and again, Turkish people and Turkish politicians feel that they are being lied by the EU leaders. So this migration agreement, Turkey was proposed to be given visa-free travel, so which was blocked. Those aid for the Syrian immigrants was delayed, and also modernization of the custom union is used as a bargaining chip. But I think it should be even negotiated without considering as a bargain chip. So it is necessity, and it is in the interest of both EU and Turkey. I think in the post-COVID-19 world, the relationship, regional cooperation will become more important. And Turkey, with its manufacturing potential and the population, it's an important asset for EU. But their putting more pressure on Turkey rather than some other countries that have even more oppressive regimes. So one key thing, I think one key example, which I usually give about Turkey's skepticism and Turkey's really disappointment about EU with its politics is that, so once to this, in July the 15th, 2016, Turkey faced a coup attempt by members of the FETA. So it took many days for members of the Turkey's Western alliance to condemn pushists. And it took 57 days for High Representative of Foreign Affairs and Security Federica Mogherini to visit Turkey. So it took 57 days. However, they visited, so Cathy Ashton visited, Sisi in Egypt 14 days after he toppled Egypt's first democratically elected president. So I think this double standard really disappointed Turkish politicians and Turkish people. So I think, before starting to talk about sensitive strategic issues, I think we have to find a way to deal with these grievances, lack of trust, and we have to initiate a new dialogue to overcome those barriers. I think those barriers have been accumulated in the last several years, and without finding a common ground on those issues, and without some confidence-building measures, we cannot talk about long-term strategic issues. When we turn to long-term strategic issues, I think there are too many issues that may become joint agenda for EU and for Turkey. I think, especially in the area of security, Turkey is a very critical actor. So in Eastern Mediterranean, in Black Sea, in the MENA region, Turkey is one of the key stakeholders. So today, European actors are safe because Turkey is fighting against terrorism in Syria, Iraq, and trying to overcome some of these problems. Another issue is that Turkey is the only actor in Syria from the Western alliance. So it's very important trying to counterbalance impact of Iran and Russia. And Turkey is the only actor that actively supports militarily the Ukraine in the Crimean issue. So these are very important. I mean, Western commentators oftentimes criticize Turkey by warming its relation with Russia, but there are some major disagreements between Russia and Turkey, and I think Turkey's presence in the side of European and Western alliance is a very significant issue, but this double standard really pushes both actors and disappoints Turkey. So I think these issues are, very important. For the energy, for the migration, I think there are shared interests. So Turkey often thinks that Turkey is taking too much risks, provides security to European actors, but gets nothing other than being criticized by the European actors. I think that's very important. I mean, during the Germany's presidency in the EU, German Chancellor played significant constructive roles to find common ground. But unfortunately, some of the countries, Greece and France, tried to use the solidarity of the Union for their own interests. So that's also another thing. So Turkey was expecting to see a broader strategic vision, a long-term strategic vision from the European actors that would allow incorporating Turkey. But unfortunately, some actors utilize this solidarity for their own interests rather than moving in the direction of joint strategic vision. So the lack of strategic vision and coordinating the security policies with regard to just solely with the US is another mistake. So I'm not too optimistic about fast, resolution of the issues between Turkey and EU. Unfortunately, the problems are huge, and there is no functional negotiation procedure which provides some advantages to Turkey. So it is becoming more easy for some politicians and some actors in Europe to use Turkey as their foreign policy issue. And also Brexit issue also weakened Turkey's position. And experienced leaders like Angela Merkel may be leaving, and that's also another significant issue. And also anti-Turkey, discourse is becoming part of the mainstream. So Islamophobia and Turkophobia is becoming part of the mainstream discourse in Europe, especially in more radical social movements as well as political movements. So these are some dangerous movements. I think if the European leaders do not take long-term, strategic vision, and engage Turkey with such a perspective, it would be very difficult to overcome those obstacles and those impediments. So I think if things would go forward in the positive direction, there should be a long process of confidence building. So we don't expect a huge breakthrough, but starting with positive, constructive issues, putting more carrots on the negotiation table would be a good starting point, and abandoning the language of sanctions. I think that is very dangerous. So if the sanction discourse becomes the predominant discourse, I think Turkey will even start to see EU as a security issue. So we can talk lots of issues, but I think for the moment, unfortunately, I'm a little bit, although I always supported this integration, and we know that Turkish, decision makers nowadays mention EU as a strategic priority, but I don't really see any constructive signals from the EU side. So I'm hoping to, see a better transformation and some conciliatory gestures from the European side. Thank you.
Talha, thank you for your statements, and thank you also for your outlook for the near future of the European Union-Turkey relations. And it's realistic. It's not extremely positive, but it's basis, as you mentioned, on realities. So what is it? Lack of trust, declining of the support for the European Union within among the Turkish public, which is the sovereign, they are voters, and I mean this alienation kind of a process. We'll start to ask you in the second round. I will start with you, Talha. When we look at the as you described as well, the Turkish foreign policy vis-a-vis European Union, what are the highlights? I mean, we have to look at the European side. There is no common ground for a concerted foreign policy within the European Union, because we see it at in the MENA region, at the conflicts also in Karabakh. There is not one voice, as Kissinger said before, decades before, that he has no red telephone when he wants to call Europe. It's still the case. We can see on the ground that there is no common foreign security policy. of the European Union. That's why there is not a strategic mindset there to look in a long-term period. So what is the reaction of Turkey? What we see on the ground is, what I see, can you comment on this, that Turkey is more and more focusing on the bilateral relations of each European member states. So not only we see here that there is no homogeneous group of countries who are countering Turkish interests, but we have different groups, 3 groups mentioned, Sultan. So do you see also that Turkey is, of course, having its official communication channels and negotiations, discussions with Brussels, but isn't it the case that Turkey now is more and more strengthening the bilateral channels with each or with the most friendly in terms of political cooperation countries, in order to have more influence on the decision making in the European Union, Talha?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, there are serious challenges in the world. So I mentioned Ukraine, Crimea, Afghanistan, Iraq, Nagorno-Karabakh, Syria, Libya, and even the sub-Saharan Africa. So there are significant issues and mounting civil war in Ethiopia. So you see, in 1990s, European actors were there. They were part of solution. They engaged actively, do something. Nowadays, we don't see West in Nagorno-Karabakh crisis. We don't see West, in Syria. I mean, of course, US is there, but if you look from the perspective of European actors, we don't see them. We see them in Afghanistan, part of the NATO, but they are quite reluctant. So they consider what we're gonna do if American troops withdraw. So I think this is what I mean by lack of strategic vision. Of course, Turkey is neighbor to all these regions. Turkey has security concerns in all these regions. And I mean, Turkey faces with Iran and Russia in Syria. I mean, faces with Iran in Iraq. So faces with problems in the Eastern Mediterranean. Libya is a ground for. So what is the position of EU in all these things? So we see, France cooperating with UAE, Egypt, and Russia in Libya. So is this the common policy? We hear some voices from Italy and Germany, but why aren't they more active in Libya? So if the civil war in Libya continues more than longer, this will turn into a significant security challenge. So Turkey is there. I mean, by balancing, the civil war, by supporting the legitimate government, I think played an important role. I mean, Turkey's presence in Syria is very significant. I mean, if Turkey wasn't in Idlib, probably 2 more million people were in the doors of the Europe. So unfortunately, when Turkey looks at the challenges, so the fight with terrorism, instability in the region, dealing with some of the actors like Russia and Iran, Turkey doesn't see European actors in its side. I mean, even the European actors are generating more problems, troubles. So Greece is violating Lausanne Treaty, arming the islands, violating Turkey's sovereignty in the Eastern Mediterranean. And rather than finding a common ground, bringing some diplomatic solution, diplomatic negotiation, European actors are siding in solidarity with Greece. I mean, even the ordinary person with a conscience will see the maximalist claims of Greece. I mean, who would support such a stupid map? But Turkey is trying to, protect its soldiers. So, I mean, when Turkey lists significant issues, it is strategic vulnerabilities and security threats, and even inside, terror and coup. Turkey cannot see European actors in its side. When Turkey is facing economic difficulties, it doesn't see Europe in its side. In some of those issues, despite disagreements, Russia played more constructive dialogue. Despite those differences, Russian side were more open to diplomatic dialogue and negotiation rather than Europe and US. I think this is very important. So how, most people criticize, is Turkey, shifting the axis? No, Turkey is not shifting the axis. The axis, it thinks it, if Turkey believes it is part of, has never helped Turkey to stabilize itself in the last decade. Mm-hmm. So I think this is also, Turkey doesn't see much of a strategic vision. Of course, Europe is a huge economic hub. It's very important, diplomatic actor, European actors, but it doesn't address Turkey's key security issues. I think these are important things, and I think starting to think again in terms of strategic vision is important. So I think the bilateral relations for the moment seems to be, better option for Turkey. So it would be much easier to handle one by one, because Greece and Greek Cypriots are using this solidarity. Turkey has very constructive relations, joint economic interests, many of the actors. We know that they are very supportive of Turkey, but unfortunately, this is shadowed by some minor actors, like in the last summit. I think if European actors cannot come up with a shared strategic agenda, Turkey will prefer the path of strengthening bilateral relations with the EU member countries. So that is probably the only existing option for Turkey for the moment.
Okay, thank you, Talha. I will come to Rainer. This was part of the second round for Talha. Rainer, you're still there. Thanks God. So my question goes to you. I mean, you also gave some outlook what will happen in the next months in the relations between Turkey and the European Union. And I will combine it with a question of Mustafa Bilge Kadan. He wrote, he asks, he asks a question to you, and also later he said I should also ask Talha. Sorry, Mustafa Bilge Kadan, I missed it, but I'm now with Rainer. Rainer, when there will be, let's say, when there will be more irritation, more tensions, and when the path will not a common path of Turkey and of the European Union. So what could be the scenario for Turkey? Since you know Turkey quite well and you are very often there, you have you work there for the time being. You are in Germany, and the question is from the audience is. Could be there more closer relations with Russia at the areas of hotspots, conflict areas like the Eastern Mediterranean. So what kind of a consequence would it have due to the fact when we realize that Turkey has an enormous importance as a NATO ally in the southeast flank of the NATO? So will Turkey drift out of the Western system? When we hear Turkish officials and when we talk with Turkish experts on defense security policy, it will never happen. But what is your assessment on that?
Well, at the end, everything boils down to the economy. Turkey needs a strong anchor. Russia cannot be the strong anchor economically. The economic picture in Turkey is becoming rather gloomy. Just look at the financial sector. The currency reserves are consumed. If there is another external shock, capital will flow out again, and there will be a significant currency crisis. So this is one point. The second one is that there is an erosion of purchasing power. Inflation is higher than the interest rate, and the interest rate is higher than the increase of the salaries. That means for the ordinary people, life is becoming more difficult. And now we are in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, and this pandemic will leave significant scars. That means, well, Turkey needs trading partners. Turkey needs FDI inflows. Turkey needs technological partners. Is Russia the partner? Definitely not. And therefore, my guess is it is better to have a bird in your hand than two birds in the bush. Take what you need. Well, I'm an advocate of realpolitik. Realpolitik means there is a national interest. Forget about rhetorics. Rhetorics is a leverage to have better results in the negotiations. I don't think that Turkey will have an alternative to the European Union as a strong economic partner. The Middle East is a burden. China is far away. Russia is having oil but no technology. And I would like to have an authoritarian country as Russia as a partner. I'm fully with Talha when he criticizes the European policy on Ukraine, on Egypt. I'm ashamed as a European that the French president gives the highest French order to the Egyptian military dictator. This is wrong. It is ethically wrong, morally wrong, and we rather need to support, well, today, 10 years ago, in the Arab world, in Tunisia, the so-called Arab Spring, the Arab uprising have started. We should rather support the civil society in the Arab world and not these dictators, which create in the long run a bigger security threat than we think they create. No, they provide security. So, well, in this very difficult setting, Turkey is practicing a coercive foreign policy. I'm afraid that Turkey might reach a point of overstretching. If you have such an, let's say, active foreign policy, you need to have a sound economic base. I'm afraid that this economic base, which was very strong in the past, with a very strong industrial base, is eroding. So we need to protect this economic base for the welfare of the Turkish people and also for being able to have a constructive and active foreign policy. Just to sum up, well, it's better to have this bird in your hand than two birds in the bush. So, well, I hope that both sides, the European Union and Turkey, will come again to sense to see the strategic value of Turkey and to find compromises. But the compromise you cannot reach when you send out warships into the Mediterranean. You sit together, and this is also a part of the final declaration of the EU summit. You need to have an international conference on the Mediterranean, including the EU, which could not be an honest broker. You need to bring in the Americans. You need to bring in the United Nations. You need to bring in experienced lawyers in order to find a solution that is just and accepted by everyone.
Okay, thank you, Rainer. I do agree with you. I mean, when there will be some kind of, when the critical path will come to an intersection, I believe that, and this is what I also heard from decision makers in Turkey. The opt out or to disconnect the relations with Europe is not an option. That's for sure. And I think not because Turkey has economic crisis, economic struggling, but Turkey had in the past even more severe struggling economic situation and I think they are able to overcome it in the mid and long term. The autark Turkey has of course diversified its foreign policy in terms of more autark, more touching upon national interest instead of the interest of institutions, which is very legitimate. And look at France and other countries, and that's but does not mean that Turkey will put its direction in foreign and security policy as a paradigm change to other actors. And we see, I mean, when you hear from when Turkey came closer in cooperation with Russia, and there was an outcry that Russia has hijacked Turkish foreign policy, but it's really not the case. You can see it now. The recent days, Turkey has deepened strategic and security cooperation with Ukraine. You know, this is something which could be also an example for some European countries to stand with Ukraine. On the other hand, to have a more constructive approach towards Russia. I think Zoltan, thanks, Rainer. Zoltan, now the second round and the third, especially, I think we will put it together. I think Hungary is, when I look in the Turkish media, then or when I talk to decision makers, Hungary has a very positive perception. So is it because they are close? They have closer relations when it comes to the bilateral economic and security interests or cultural, and how is it? How is the impact on the Turkey-EU relations? You mentioned, you touched upon it. Maybe you have some minutes, 5 minutes so far still, and maybe you can touch upon it again in a little bit more detailed way.
Okay, thank you very much for this question. I will try to summarize everything, because we can have several other meetings about Turkish-Hungarian relations. It's a huge topic. So anyway, okay, from one point of view, from a historical point of view, yeah, it's a little bit controversial due to the Ottoman heritage. Yes, a great part of Hungary was ruled by the Ottoman Empire for a while. Of course, it's a little bit controversial for the Hungarian population and for the Turkish one. But here is really important, compared to the other people of the Balkans and Central Europe. The Hungarian nation-building process, starting in the modernization, the country, and so on, in the 19th century and in the beginning of the 20th century, when the Hungarians started to find their roots in Asia, in Central Asia, linguistically, historically. A great part of the population, and especially the intelligentsia, was rather favoring a kind of Turkish relation, and they consider Turks within the Ottoman empires as relatives. And for example, in the Balkan wars, or during the wars between Russia and the Ottoman Empire, there were protests in Budapest, organized by Hungarian students and whatever, in favor of the Ottoman Empire. And even the two countries, or Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire, were fighting together during the First World War. So it was a really important message for from the Hungarian population, and this kind of let's say brotherhood has still nowadays a really important impact in Turkey. So, for example, in Istanbul we had Magyar Kardeşler Caddesi and so on. Okay, so we can talk a lot about it, that we can have we can see similar patterns and remnants in Hungary as well today from this past. And what we can see nowadays, or during the last 3 decades, so after the collapse of the Cold War, but I mentioned there is a a new impetus to reorganize, to reconstitute Hungarian-Turkish relations. We can see growing economic relations. Of course, Hungary is a small or country within the European Union, but the trade and the economic cooperation was really booming until now. We will see the effect of the COVID-19, but it will be rather universal than just bilateral negative effect. But as I say, we have more and more Turkish investors, and also Hungarians are really ready to go to Turkey and invest there. And the tourism sector was also booming until COVID-19. Probably it will continue later on, which means that at economic level and concerning the perception level, there is within Hungary as well a kind of positive view concerning Turkey. And at the political level, the Hungarian government mentioned or stated several times that concerning the geopolitical room for maneuver or geopolitical opportunities of Hungary is kind of, it can be outlined in a geopolitical triangle between Moscow, Berlin, Moscow, and Ankara, let's say Istanbul. Yes. And Hungarian foreign policy always have to keep in mind that that is unreached by or encircled by these three kind of sensitivity. Of course, from this point of view, Berlin probably it's more important because Hungary is part of the EU. But at the security level and the economic level, increasingly, Turkey is a key actor, as we could see during the migration crisis, and of course. On the long run, if we think in a greater perspectives concerning any kind of new possibilities for new migration crisis in Syria, concerning Idlib, or Turkey has become also important influence of any kind of migration routes in Libya. So it's for the Hungarian government, this kind of geopolitical changes in the Turkish foreign policy are rather increasing the role of Ankara in shaping the Hungarian foreign policy. So I think in the long run and in the short run, it's 100% sure that Hungary will also will remain a kind of stable partner in Turkey within the European Union.
Okay, Sultan, thank you. But I think it is very important that countries such as Hungary could contribute to a more positive agenda, which was kind of an outlook from the last summit in Brussels of the leaders of the European Union. And I think the message was clear. I think there are a lot of issues to tackle with on the bilateral ties, EU and Turkey, and it is very important to have a positive agenda with promises from both sides, which we saw with President Erdoğan's reform initiative. Also, more his standing or his positive message to European Union. I think we will see what happens within the next 3 months. How the factor of the U.S. administration will have, what kind of impact it will have on the Turkish-European relations. But personally, I had a very fruitful. I think we had a very fruitful discussion here, and it was quite interesting to have the inside view from all three panelists. I thank you all three, and hope that we will see each other at similar platforms, and wish you all health and success, and all the best for the new year, next year. Hope everything will be better also for you guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to close now the session.